Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today we are talking about mastering your reflections and refractions with trace sets. Trace sets allow you to pick and choose what is reflected and refracted in your Redshift scene. As a bonus, we will walk through the lighting setup of the cover page in part 2. So let's jump in and see what it's all about. Okay everyone, so today we are talking about trace sets inside of Redshift. Now, trace sets are nothing more than a fancy way of how is my object seen by reflections and refractions with inside Redshift? Okay, it's like how is it going to react with that? All right, so today what I'm going to be showing you is I'm going to be showing you two things. First, we're going to go over what trace sets are and how to use them, which is very simple. And then secondly, I'm going to go through the cover page and show you just quickly my lighting setup and how I use trace sets to build that. Before we jump into trace sets, I want to show you what you are looking at in this scene. So in this scene, we have our statue, right? We have just a statue here. We have a plane that's going to act as our mirror. It's just purely reflective. We have a landscaped object that is acting as our water. That is also purely reflective. I have a cyc here just in the back, so we have something to be in the background. And then in the back here, I'm reflecting a sky. So when you come here and you see this, you're basically just looking at a mirror with a sky reflecting into it. So let's go ahead and let's start with trace sets. Now, as I mentioned, trace sets are just a way to control your reflections and your refractions. Now, let's say in this scene, we have this statue and we like that it is reflecting into the water, but I don't like that it's reflecting into this mirror. Okay, I don't like this double reflection that's happening here. Like that's not what I want. So how do we get rid of that? So what you could do is you could go to your statue, you could go tags, you could go render tags, you could say Redshift object, and you could do your visibility. You could select override, turn off your secondary ray visibility. And when you do that, what it's going to do is it's going to get rid of your reflections, but unfortunately it's going to get rid of the water, which we don't want, right? We want it reflecting onto the water. So this is not a good solution. So this is where trace sets come in handy. Now with trace sets, it's all about what's coming in, not what's going out. Okay, so what's that mean? So when I come here to my Redshift tag that I applied to the statue, this is all what's going out. This is saying, okay, this statue, this is what the world is going to see. Is it going to see my shadows, my AO? What's it going to see? With trace sets, it's pretty much the opposite. It's what's coming in. All right, and because it's what's coming in, that means we need to think about the mirror because that's what we're concerned about here. The mirror is what's coming in. We don't want these reflections of the statue coming into the mirror. Okay, so let's go ahead and zoom out here a little bit. And what we want to do is we want to do the same thing. We want to go mirror, render tags, Redshift object. Now, I know I said trace sets, and that's true. That is what they are, but they are not actually called that when you look at it. It's like the technical term, I guess. What we want to do is we want to go to exclusion. We want to go to exclusion, and we want to hit override. Now it's saying, what do you want to override? Okay, well, we want to override the statue because what's coming into the mirror? The statue is coming into the mirror and we do not want that. So as soon as we do that, you see it gets rid of our reflection here in the back of the mirror, which is great. Now, how is that happening? So there's a few buttons here that are happening. So what you have here is you have your object. Now you have these three icons. This first icon is for refractions, the second icon is for reflections, and the third icon is for your hierarchy. Now, in our case, we're using reflections. So let's just go ahead and I'm going to turn to this angle, and you're going to see that it's still catching a reflection here of the bottom of the statue, but that's just happening because it's coming through the water. So we're concerned about the reflections. So let's go ahead and let's just see what happens when we click this button. So when we click this button, it basically says disregard the exclusion of the reflection. Okay, so that's all that does. It's just an on and off switch. Next, let's talk about hierarchy. So for hierarchy, what does that mean? Well, you can probably figure it out. So let's just say I have this sphere here, and let me just move it to the side so you can see it. The sphere right now is reflecting into the mirror. But if I put it underneath the statue, it's going to go away because what we're telling it now is we're saying anything that's underneath this object, underneath the object that we're telling it to exclude, then it just needs to go away. So that's what's happening there. Whereas if I turn off hierarchy, you're going to see it comes back because now it's not looking at anything underneath. So this is super powerful because now you can control what objects are reflected into where. All right, so that covers the reflections, the hierarchy, but what about the refractions? Now the refractions are pretty much the same concept, where it's like what is going to be seen through the refractions. So what I have here is I just have a simple rectangle with a glass shader applied to it. And right now, if we move through it, you can see that we are seeing the statue through the refractions. So let's go ahead and let's take a tag. Let's go render tags, Redshift object. Once again, we're going to go to exclusion. We're going to hit override. And because it's what's coming into this glass object, what we don't want to come in is we do not want this statue to come in. All right. Now, I'm glad that this happened because this happens a lot. Sometimes when you put this tag on, it doesn't update right away. It's like a glitch. It's a bug. I am currently on Redshift 3.5.12. If this happens, what you should do is just turn off your viewport render and turn it back on. And when you do that, it should update and you will be happy. So that's good. So now you see that if I turn this off, now we see it. If I turn it on, you do not. So that's the general concept for that one. Okay, so we've been talking about exclude, but what happens if we set it to include? Well, you guessed it. It's basically the opposite. So now all that this mirror is going to see reflecting in it and refracting in it is what you tell it. So now you see that we have instantly a different background, right? Because if you remember, the background that was reflecting was the sky, but now we're saying only include the sphere and the statue. Now, if we wanted the sky back, we could just put this object back in here, which is the sky. And then, for instance, if we don't want the sphere, we would just take out the sphere and so on. So it's just the opposite. Same concept, just the flipped concept of it. That takes us through the reflections and the refractions, and I just want to quickly cover some of the limitations of this. All right, so the limitations are, what I found is, well, for instance, what you're seeing here is you're seeing that we are seeing the reflection from the water, actually. So we're seeing the statue is casting a reflection onto this water, and then the mirror is catching the water reflection. So to my knowledge, I don't know how to get rid of that other than to mess with your trace depth. So you could go to your global settings and you could just put your reflections down to 1, but then it's going to start changing the look of everything. So I really don't know if it's possible to fix that. If someone knows, I would love to know. But to my knowledge, there's no way to say I even want you to exclude it from a secondary reflection. Be cool if it could, but to my knowledge, it's not possible. So that's one limitation. The other limitation is lights. So what does that mean? So let's say that I have a light. All right, and this light is a visible area light. Okay, so because it's visible, we're able to see it in the reflections. All right, so what would happen if I went to mirror and I said exclude? I want you to exclude this light. It doesn't work. I'm even going to try to refresh just to make sure that it didn't break. But it's not possible. So unfortunately, that's not possible. You could go to your light, you could say details, and you could say do not show in the reflections. That is one possibility, but then again, you're still, now it's not showing in any reflections, so you're not able to control that. So those are the only small limitations that I found. They're small and they're big. I do wish that you could control lights, and I wish that you could also control these secondary reflections. All right, so that's going to do it for part 1. I'm going to jump over and just quickly show you my lighting setup and everything for part 2, which will be how to make the cover page. All right, for the cover page, I just want to quickly run you through the lighting setup and kind of what I did here. So all I have is pretty much the same setup as what you saw earlier. We have the water, which is nothing more than a landscaped object. On that landscaped object, I have a purely reflective material. And then we have the mirror also, right? So in this scene, it's just like a half circle mirror. I have the statue, and then I have just a few rocks that are kind of scattered. Now what I'm doing is basically also in the scene, I have just for a background object, I have this plane, which is just a sky. That just has like a nice sunset, and then I have that same sky here, which is just flipped, and that's projecting into the mirror here. So like you're in this mirror, you're seeing this sky that's in the background here is all it is. So that's like the setup for the layout. Now for the lighting, I'll just switch to the clay mode here. So what we have for the lighting is, I'm just going to turn off everything and go one by one. So we have the key light. The key light is an area light with an intensity set to these numbers. I've lowered the spread and the size, and that is basically just like a top light that's kind of coming from here, and it's hitting the top portion of the statue. Okay, next, after that key light, we have just kind of this back rim light that's happening. Okay, so this back rim light is kind of sneaky back here. It's this one right here, and it's just kind of carving out a little bit of shape. That's happening for the left side. And then I have an additional one that is a rim, more of a traditional rim light. And this one is like a blue color to kind of like help it pop out. And this one's kind of sneaky. Where is it? Yeah, it's just kind of sneaky back here, just hitting it to kind of give it a little bit of shape. So when you kind of put them all together, you start to get, yeah, the look that I was going for. Yeah, so again, if you look at it without the key, you know, it's fine. And then you start to add the rim lights to give it just a little bit more definition and kind of pop it out a bit. And then I have a dome light. This dome light is just a texture from HDR Haven, and I will show you what it looks like. I'll turn it on. We'll just turn everything off but the dome light. So the dome light is giving it the fill and kind of like the nice kind of purpley sunset undertones. If I pan around here, you'll see it's just that. And then we combine them all together and we get our lighting set up. So then when we go back and we come from clay mode, you see with the added reflections and everything, you get the final image. And the reason why you'll see if you don't have these rim lights on here, it just kind of like fades in. It just doesn't pop as much. So it was a little bit tricky to get this to kind of pop out. So just with a little bit of lighting setup and just playing, I was able to get to where I was. I don't think there's really anything else crazy going on. There's just I have the same trick where I'm not reflecting it in the back here. So yeah, that's it for the cover page, and that's it for the lesson. So I hope it was helpful, and I will see you on the next one.